Alright, what's going on? The name's Sergio Falcone and I am a parrot. How am I able to write despite having feathers, not hands? Well, I am actually having my dearest manager, David the Duke Dickinson, write this for me to use in the testimony. I guess I should explain some things. I work as a singer in a smoky bar with the smell of wine and cheap perfume. The bar is called Smoky Smoke on Smoke, and it is owned by none other than Big Smoke himself. I am not alone when it comes to my singing, as I sing with my partner and longtime spotted dick addict, Lucas Valdez. Valdez is a rooster with a serious hard-on for guns like some kind of Hank Hill. He can't keep his red feathers off the triggers. His antics have caused big problems behind the stage for us as Big Smoke threatens to chuck us out if Valdez can't get his act straight, despite me telling him time and time again that he needs to straighten himself out. Valdez refuses to listen as he is busy flirting with the waitresses while Donald Duck eggs him on in the background. It's disgusting, I say. Anyways, me and Valdez both live together in a massive bird nest just north of Strawberry. We are incredibly poor and make practically no money from our singing career. We once got tipped $100,000 from an incredibly wealthy shrew who is getting paid by Big Pete. Big Pete owns the Christmas tree lot down in Croydon and makes like £1 million a week. For reasons I don't know. Valdez and I often spend the night at Captain Hook's boat where he does stockbroking just so we can avoid our landlord Sylvester Stallone having a go at us. In order to cope with our massive debts, Valdez suggested we borrow money from hardened criminal Vladimir Popkov. I tried to advise Valdez against it, but it was far too late. Popkov was on our case nearly every day. He'd wait outside the bar for us to finish singing and then would have us beaten to a pulp by his hired guns. Let this be a lesson to you boys, Popkov would say as he farted into our beaks. It was so frickin' disgusting it makes me vomit just thinking about it. Aside from singing, I have tried to achieve my true lifelong ambition, which is acting. I've landed a few acting jobs here and there in low-budget movies like A Mad Tutter and The Washing Machines Have Eyes. Sadly, nothing ever comes from these as they are very cheaply made by Solomon Richards, who has gone quite downhill ever since Michael DeSanta took over his production company over in Vinewood Hills. And now, I didn't just go through that entire tangent just to make you feel sorry for me and my plight. No siree, I did not. This story isn't about me at all. In fact, it's all about a certain bald-headed boy wearing a yellow shirt and blue shorts. I'm talking, of course, about Caillou. If you haven't seen Caillou before, well, count yourself lucky, friend. I cannot stand that bald-headed shithead. Valdez, on the other hand, loves the show despite his protests to the contrary. Me and Valdez had just finished singing one miserable Friday afternoon and preparing to head home. The bar closes much earlier on a Friday as Smoke has to listen to Rebecca Black's Free Day for 10 hours straight. Valdez and I reached our nest and headed inside to watch some TV. I sat down on the sofa and lit myself a cigar. I sure do love a good smoky smoke on smoke, if you know what I mean. Valdez took the remote from me and changed the channel over to Tiny Pop. The announcer, who sounded like Cleveland Brown, said that Caillou was coming on next. Oh gosh, Valdez changed the channel, I protested as Valdez said I would have to watch Caillou with him. Do I have to? I asked, and Valdez simply replied with, "You must." I didn't have anything better to do anyway, so I agreed to watch it with him. The episode started with the normal theme song, however it was anything but normal. Caillou's shirt was red instead of yellow, and this made me vomit all over the place. How could it not? Also, the person singing the lyrics was not Caillou, no, it was Big Shaq. Also, Daddy was replaced by Squidward, and Caillou was shown beating the snot out of Pennywise with a rolling pin. This was not the Caillou that I know. It's just a greasy spoon. Seriously, reader, clean that sucker before it attracts mold. The episode then started with the grandma getting ready to read a storybook to her grandkids as normal, only she was a fat fucking lizard with blue skin. She had clearly also been tricked into drinking the dreaded Smurf juice like so many before her. "Story time, kids!" the grandma proclaimed as she sat down on the sofa. There was only one grandkid instead of two, and it was Billy Bob Tanley. "Give me a beer, you fucking dog!" Tanley barked as the grandma proceeded to open up the storybook. Today's story is called Caillou Goes to Tesco. Caillou was shown messing around in the front yard while Daddy and Mommy load up the car for a road trip. "Come on, Caillou, we need to be at the Mushroom Kingdom before sundown," Daddy pleaded as Caillou made his way towards the car. He eventually got inside the car as Daddy put the radio on. The music that played on the radio was Eggs and Chips. I've never even heard of that fucking song before, and I'm sure you haven't either, reader. During the car ride, Caillou asked where are we going, Daddy? Daddy turned around to face Caillou and said, "I just said the Mushroom Kingdom, pay more attention, idiot." Caillou looked as though he was going to say something, but Daddy interrupted him by saying, "We need to make a quick stop at Tesco's first to pick up some spaghetti and meatballs for King Mario." That's when I noticed something was off. Rosie was not in the car with them. Instead, she was replaced by Mr. Krabs. "I love money," Mr. Krabs proclaimed, who sounded Welsh for some bizarre reason. The car eventually pulled up outside Tesco as Caillou ran across the street without looking both ways first. Daddy did not seem care, nor did Mommy as they followed Caillou inside. Caillou began pestering a man selling free samples because he looked like Quasimodo. "Caillou, that is so fucking rude," Daddy barked as he threw a slice of moldy toast at Caillou's bald head. Daddy then proceeded to explain that if Caillou did not behave himself, he would be handed over to Big Smile Lee. Caillou looked absolutely terrified and promised to start behaving. Daddy and Mommy paid a visit to the bakery in order to pick up some sesame seed buns. The baker was none other than Wallace. Okay. "Why don't you come in?" Wallace asked before continuing with, "We were just about to have some cheese." Then without warning, the episode transitioned to another part of the store where Garfield was shown eating some frozen pizzas. "Oi, you! Stop that!" a middle-aged man yelled at the top of his lungs. He looked some kind of college professor. "Sorry, Professor, I was just looking for a spot of tea," Garfield said. That was rather out of character for Garfield to apologize for eating a pizza, but then again, I digress. The episode then transitioned back to Caillou, who had become lost from Daddy and Mommy. He made his way into the sweet aisle and looked absolutely dumbfounded. He had to face the facts. His head really was shaped like a balloon, just like the Cockroach King had foretold him. "Caillou was a little bitch," the narrator could be heard saying in the background over and over and over again. Caillou saw something in the aisle which apparently caught his eye, a pack of gummy worms. He went to go grab the packet before getting thrown down the hall by none other than Bubble Bass. "I don't think so," Bubble Bass proclaimed as he began eating the gummy worms like no tomorrow. Caillou made his way down another aisle, which was the pet food aisle. Daddy and Mommy, meanwhile, had requested the aid of a security guard named Moro. Moro was looking for his big break, and this could be his chance. He had planning on retiring soon anyway and moving to Lost Heaven. He had contacts down there who could swing him a place on the round table. So Moro began going through the many aisles calling for Caillou. "When we find Caillou, I'm going to kick his ass," Daddy said evilly. They asked an incredibly fat man if he had seen Caillou. The man didn't reply. Instead, he pulled an incredibly cheese face. I knew that face. That was none other than Donald Sandler, District Attorney of Great Britain. Meanwhile, Caillou had made his way inside a back room. In the back room, some ballasts were hanging out smoking dope and offered Caillou some. Caillou had been warned about the dangers of drugs time and time again from his father. However, other people like Caillou's teacher, Miss Martin, seemed to encourage the usage of drugs. Caillou decided he would tempt fate by smoking the dope. He took one huge puff, and his eyes turned red. Caillou then proclaimed, "I like getting really high. We made him smoke drugs. You sure this is cool?" One of the ballasts asked. Before he could get an answer, Caillou had already left the back room dancing and singing like a madman. The ballasts began chasing after Caillou so their boss, Mr. Parks, would not find out about them smoking dope on the job. Lucky for them, Parks was busy eating apples in his office and wouldn't be out for at least another 6 hours. "Grove Street OG's going down," the ballast cried as Ryder, who was shopping with CJ and Sweet, appeared in front of them. "Ballast!" Ryder cried as CJ said, "Throw the cart at them." Ryder proceeded to throw the shopping cart at the ballast, killing all of them instantly. Sweet, meanwhile, smiled a cheesy grin, the kind of cheesy cheese grin that only a mother could love. Caillou, meanwhile, made his way down to the alcohol islet where Garfield was. Garfield had also been lured into smoking dopey with the ballast. He had also gotten rid of the professor under shady circumstances. Garfield made a stage appear magically and began dancing on it with Caillou. "He's on top of the wall, he's on top of the wall." A male voice be could heard singing in the background in an overly serious tone. Garfield and Caillou danced for a while with both of them donning top hats and canes. "Garfield!" a voice yelled, and the camera panned over to show the voice came from none other than John Arbuckle. "I'm very angry with you," John said, as he proceeded to yank Garfield off the stage. Also, John looked horrible. He looked like my toilet on a Sunday evening. Know what I mean? Anyways, John began lecturing Garfield about potatoes or something I don't even know, to be perfectly honest with you, dear reader. Neither could Garfield from the look of thing, as both he and Caillou were high as fuck. "Don't you try and blame this all on Odie," John barked as the screen then showed Daddy, Mommy, and Moro appearing from behind John. "Hey, where's Caillou?" Daddy asked as Caillou began messing around with the various shelves of wine and other alcoholic beverages. He managed to climb on top of the shelf with Garfield following behind him. John and Daddy began climbing up the shelf after Garfield and Caillou, respectively. Meanwhile, Billy Bob Tanley was shown buying beer and said, "I'm getting bored." Caillou and Garfield began dancing again, as did Mr. Krabs, who was using his eye sockets as a skipping rope. "Ahoy, me bucko!" Mr. Krabs proclaimed when all of a sudden John and Daddy appeared behind Garfield and Caillou. "Caillou, I'm very disappointed with you," Daddy said angrily. Suddenly, the shelf began to break from all the pressure on it. Garfield and Caillou's antics had attracted the attention of Mr. Parks, who climbed on top of the shelf as well. "Listen here, boyo," Mr. Park barked as he began squeezing apples with his bare hands. A dangerous pastime, I know. Meanwhile, Sweet Rider and CJ climbed on the shelf on the other side and began singing Christmas songs. "Oh no, they're doing the Chili Charlie Cha-Cha!" Daddy cried out as he covered Caillou's eyes with his hand. The episode then cut to another part of Tesco, where the sheriff from Robin Hood was seen buying fruit with Friar Tuck. Get out of my church!" Friar Tuck yelled angrily as he began pushing Sheriff towards the alcohol aisle with his belly. Sheriff's two assistants, Trigger and Nutsy, sat on a cash register watching them. Sheriff was then pushed into the shelf, which had Caillou and his crew standing on top, causing it to become lopsided. It then began tilting towards the floor at a violent rate as Sheriff and Friar Tuck both climbed on top of it in order to continue their fight. Mr. Wong, who was shopping for Easter eggs with Bugs Bunny, climbed on top of the shelf, which had CJ and his friends on top of. "All right, take it away and bring the goods," Mr. Wong said bluntly as he was blunter than a blunt kitchen knife. Then all of a sudden, Donald Sandler climbed on top of the shelf too and said, "Now just calm down, all of you." This caused that shelf to start tilting towards the ground as well. Soon both shelves were full to the brim with people. Even Hank Hill had joined in on the fun. "I'm gonna kick your ass," Hank yelled to Daddy as he and Daddy both began fighting to the death. Caillou didn't seem to notice as he was still suffering from the effects of the drugs. The shelves then both collapsed onto the floor in one masterful swoop. All the bottles of premium alcohol broke in that second, causing a massive river of alcohol to start flooding the entire store. The river of alcohol was so big that it actually left Tesco and began flooding the streets outside. "You see, Caillou, this is what happens when you do drugs." Daddy sighed as he climbed on top of Mr. Parks, who was being used as a raft, as was Friar Tuck and Donald Sandler. Caillou and Garfield then both sobered up and realized what was happening. "What is going on, Daddy?" Caillou asked, as the river of alcohol crashed into a sophisticated dinner party being hosted by none other than Colonel Dodo himself. Twiddly-dee-twiddly-dee. Colonel Dodo sang as he had somehow noticed nothing out of the ordinary. The river was able to engulf the entire city, and it continued on for miles and miles. Caillou felt nothing but guilt for his actions. Garfield didn't, however, and was busy eating lasagna, which had been taken from Colonel Dodo's dinner party. "CJ, watch the damn road," Ryder barked as the river grew larger and larger, carrying people left and right. A time card then came on screen which read, 3 days later. It was shown that the flood finally came to an end and destroyed all of the city in the process. "Bloody hell, there's nothing left," Lord Cutler Beckett remarked as he looked over the scene with his telescope. Even though it would be just as easy to see without it, the whole city was nothing but destroyed buildings and decaying grasslands. "We can sweep up and start again," Daddy said as Ryder put a gun to the back of his head. Everyone looked at Daddy and Mommy with a sinister glare. "If you two had kept an eye on your boy, none of this would have happened," Sheriff barked angrily. Garfield, meanwhile, was being lectured by John again, who yelled, "When we get to our new home, I'm giving you a list of chores which you'll never complete in 1,000 years. That's when Daddy noticed something was off. "Hey, where's Caillou?" Caillou was shown standing on top of a nearby hill which overlooked the entire city. He had wanted to get out of the city for a long time, and now was finally his chance to do so. Caillou was assumed to have died in the flood, and a funeral was held in his honor. Caillou was the best kind of kid, the kind that even Super Hands thinks is a swell fella, the priest said while he quietly sobbed onto the altar. Both Daddy and Mommy gave speeches in memory of their late son. Sheriff and Friar Tuck cried on each other's shoulder. You wouldn't think that they were at each other's throats only 3 days prior. Caillou, meanwhile, went on the run to the circus where he found work as a circus master or some shit, I don't even know. He eventually moved on with his life, as did Daddy and Mommy. Life went back to normal for them until they were captured by the Flying Dutchman, who forced them join his salty crew. Other than that, though, totally completely normal. With that, the episode ended with the normal credits. Only the names in the credits were not correct. It featured the names of Rob Maniels, Donald Sandler, and General Asquith, among others. The credits then said, "Created by Vladimir Popkov." "That bastard," I said as I pulled out a handgun which I had stuffed inside the sofa cushions like any normal fella. Valdez followed me outside as we made our way towards Popkov's hangout. He owned a bar over in Broker called the Purple Otter, which he used as a front for his criminal activities. "What are we going to say to him anyhow, Sergio?" Valdez asked me as we reached the bar's front door. "We're going to shoot this crumb bum," I said as Valdez sang, "Now I get it, let's go." Vlad didn't notice us, as he was busy drinking PG tips with some of his boys, including the manager Mickey Hardnuts, who was also the father of the late great Johnny Hardnuts. Vlad eventually noticed us and asked, "Did I summon you here, yokel? You made a Caillou Lost episode, which made both me and Valdez very upset." I complained, grow up, yokel. Vlad said before continuing with, and I got a lot of powerful friends who won't take kindly to you threatening me in my own bar. Popkov then proceeded to make a run for it, leaving his hired guns to kill us, but we managed to evade them. We chased Popkov down the busy streets until he came to a stop down by a little boardwalk area. "You're fucked, yokel. My friends will track you down. You won't last a moment," Popkov cried angrily. "Oh, really?" I asked, like some kind of Captain Crook who still can't smile for cheeseburgers as much as he wishes he could do. "Anything happens to me, then Rabe will send Tong to ask questions. You got it, yokel?" Popkov asked before continuing with, "Granny Dryden thought of me as her own son. She will get revenge." Popkov then pleaded for the last time by saying, "You two are nothing in this city. You will be crushed. I just wish I could be there to watch Rabe and Dryden cut your peasant beaks off." Valdez then pulled out 2 revolvers as we both began raining bullets into Popkov's body. Vlad then proceeded to collapse onto the floor, dead and drenched in blood. "You were the stupid one, Popkov. Nobody fucks with Caillou," Valdez said as we then proceeded to dump Popkov's body in the ocean. A shark picked it up and began playing with it like it was his best friend, and that's just really sad. Well, that's what I think anyway.
Note: the reason the narrator of this story didn't finish the rest of this narration is because some of the things that are mentioned in the story didn't age too well, unfortunately. Which sucks. But other than that, the story is honestly really funny. Credits goes to Matthew Bumford for the story, and for the good laughs your stories have made Seth, Zeronex, and others laugh over the years. They really appreciate it. This is Hell Knight Ingrid, signing out.